Hello, and welcome to our presentation of the Women of Alabama exhibit, A Journey from the 1900s to 2020. This is a great group of honorees that we have selected. So let's get started. And at the end of this, there will be a little short survey online that you can take just to let us know how we did. So let's begin.
Adele Vera Hall. On paper, Adele Vera Hall's demographic reads simply as follows. Vera Hall, also known as Adele Hall, born 1902. Birthplace, Paineville, Alabama. Died 1964. Cause of death, unspecified. Gender, female. Race or ethnicity, black. Occupation, singer. Nationality, United States. Executive summary, troubled so hard. Father, Ephraim Hall, or Zully. Mother, Agnes. Husband, Nash Riddle. Daughter, Minnie Ada. But who is she really? Well, Adele Vera Hall is considered by many music fans to be the foremost singer of the blues and African American spirituals to come out of the Depression era in Alabama. Vera Hall, as she is popularly known, recorded a large body of work for ethnomusicologists. Working for the Library of Congress with the help of Alabama folklorist Ruby Perkins Tart, Hall's music is widely available and continues to influence contemporary artists such as Moby and attract new members. Quick pause for a lesson. Ethnomusicologists are individuals who study music in a cultural context. Ethnomusicology is the study of music from the cultural and social aspects of the people who make it. And Adele Vera Hall fits nicely right in between there. Ward was born around the turn of the century in Paineville, just outside of Livingston in Sumter County, to Agnes and Ephraim Zully Hall. Her father worked on a local farm in Sumter and rented land from Will Cobb. She had two older sisters, Bessie and Estelle, and a younger brother who died in infancy. In a 1948 interview with Alan Lomax, Hall recalled her mother as the disciplinarian of the family. She learned some of her first songs from her parents. In the same interview, Hall noted that her mother's favorite song was I've Got a Home in the Rock, and her father's favorite song was When I'm Standing Wondering, Lord, Show Me the Way. Of her mother, Hall said, Agnes sang all the time, especially while cooking or washing. During her childhood and again in the 1930s, Hall attended Old Shiloh Baptist Church near Paineville, where she became well known in the community for her singing. Along with her early influence of her parents, Hall learned much from Rich Amerson, another Sumter County folk singer and storyteller who gained national exposure through the recordings made by ethnomusicologist John Lomax and Harold Corlander. Amerson taught Hall an unusual collection of songs, including both blues and folk songs. Oh, trouble so hard, don't nobody know my trouble but God. Hall continued to have a life full of trials and many unexpected twists and turns, which included the death of her husband, Nash Riddle, and her daughter. Her only recorded marriage to her husband, Nash, ended tragically when he was fatally shot in a fight in either 1923 or 1924. And Hall's daughter, Minnie Ada, died in 1940 of chronic hepatitis. But through it all, her music triumphed and survived. Hall sang a variety of music, and for ethnomusicologists like John Lomax, Hall's ability to improvise and remember the songs that she heard only once or twice was remarkable. Lomax praised her as having the loveliest untrained voice that he had ever recorded. Hall was introduced to John Lomax in July of 1937 when he was traveling through the Southeast gathering music for the Works Progress Administration and the Library of Congress. Lomax and Hall met through Ruby Perkins Tart, a folklorist and Sumter County native who had been appointed by the chairman of the WPA Writers Project for Sumter County. As the first assignment, she had been asked to document and submit 8 full-length spirituals. The spiritual she sent in caught the attention of Lomax and brought him to Sumter County. In the presence of her cousin Doc Reed, Hall only sang spirituals. During that first recording trip of 1937, Hall and Reed together recorded songs such as Morning Song, Oh Jesus Just Write My Name, and Let Me Ride, singing spirituals such as I Feel Like My Time Ain't Long, I Believe I'll Go Back Home, and John Saw That Number. When her cousin was not present, Hall recorded folk songs such as Railroad Bill, John Henry, Little Sally Walker, and Stay Jolie. In subsequent trips, Lomax would record Hall singing both spirituals and blues and folk songs, including Another Man Done Gone, Trouble So Hard, Boll Weevil Blues, and Wild Ox Moan.
I heard her telling y'all all about me, but I bet y'all don't even know where Livingston, Alabama is at. Well, let me just tell y'all a little bit about Livingston, Alabama, since she told y'all all about me. You know, being born in 1902, times was hard when I was coming up. Mom and Daddy, they kept us in front of the Lord, and they kept us in church, and I've been singing my whole life. But what they didn't tell y'all was how we had to eat. Mom and Daddy grew vegetables and chickens and hogs. And when times got real hard, Mama would sell eggs to try to make ends meet. Yeah, but now getting back to this Livingston, Alabama, it's down there in that west corner. That west corner over there, it's a big old college over there. And that man, that football, or that man that have all them football players, what y'all call him, the bear? Yeah, it's down near that bear place where that man be coaching them boys playing that football. But that's what Livingston, Alabama is at, is down there in that area. But then, you know, by the time I was 15, I was a mad woman. By the time I was 16, I was a home. By the time I was 25, I was a widow. My husband got killed in a knife fight. So, you know, times wasn't so good for me. But it's okay, because I made it. I made it. So let me just go on where I'm going and leave y'all with this little bit right here. Ooh, Lordy, trouble so hard. Ooh, Lordy, trouble so hard. Don't nobody know my troubles but God. Don't nobody know my troubles but God. Went down the hill the other day. So got happy, I stayed all day. Ooh, Lordy, my trouble's so hard. Ooh, Lordy, trouble so hard. Don't nobody know my troubles but God. 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 Went in the room, didn't stay long. Looked on the bed, brother was dead. Ooh, Lordy, trouble so hard. Ooh, Lordy, trouble so hard. Don't nobody know my troubles but God. Don't nobody know my troubles but God. Ooh, Lordy, trouble so hard. Ooh, Lordy, trouble so hard. Don't nobody know my troubles but God. Don't nobody know my troubles but God. Don't nobody know my troubles but God. Don't nobody know my troubles but God.
As the front woman and guitarist for Alabama Shakes, Brittany Howard has become one of music's most celebrated figures. And the band has won 4 Grammys, and she has performed everywhere from the Obama White House to the main stage at Lollapalooza, where she sang with Paul McCartney at his invitation. But for her solo debut, Jamie, Howard boldly decided to explore new directions with diverse instrumentation and arrangements and intimate, revelatory lyrics. Aside from her musical accomplishments, Brittany has a complex and widely acknowledged personal background. First of all, she was born in the Deep South to mixed-race parents on October 1988 in Athens, Alabama. Athens is a city of 26,000 people, about halfway between Nashville and Birmingham. Her parents are a white mother and a black father. Her father was what she would describe as a hustler. He took apart old cars for parts. He didn't really get to go to college. And although he was really charming and good at talking to people, so he went into the car sales business. Brittany described her mother as pastoral. She grew up on a farm around plenty of grass and animals. Her mom got pregnant with Brittany's older sister, Jamie, who was born in 1985. Her parents married a few years later. As a kid, Brittany had a really hard time getting friends to come over. Her family lived on a junkyard. Her father was black, and they lived in the South, which wasn't very welcoming, even in the late 1980s, to interracial families. In 1988, her older sister, Jamie, died of cancer, and her parents split soon after. Brittany was 8 when Jamie died, and during her parents' separation and divorce, she got shifted around from family member to family member because her parents didn't want her to see what was going on with them. Through all of that, Brittany has held the memory of her sister Jamie close to her heart. Jamie was her first teacher. She was the one who taught her to love music and who taught her to be imaginative and creative. Brittany once explained in an article that Jamie left her with all the things she now holds near and dear. Brittany is the ultimate musician and no stranger to hard work. Brittany started singing at age 3. She began playing the guitar at age 13. She also plays piano. She went to her first concert when she was 11 or 12 to see a band in which current Alabama Shakes guitarist Heath Fall played. By the time she was 15, Brittany would regularly sneak out of the house to hear music. But before she was paid to make music, she bagged groceries at Kroger, sold used cars, made pizza at Domino's, fried eggs at a Cracker Barrel, built custom picture frames, sucked up trash for a commercial sanitation company, and delivered the U.S. mail along a route in northern Alabama. In addition to working so much, she practiced with her rock band, Alabama Shakes, whenever she could. I would work 13 hours at the post office, get off, and rush to rehearsal, she told a writer for New York Magazine. That hard work paid off because today she is an American musician, singer, and songwriter known for being the lead vocalist, guitarist, and main songwriter of rock bands Alabama Shakes and Thunder Bitch. Her work with Alabama Shakes and as a solo artist has earned her 4 Grammy Awards and 11 Grammy nominations. So it's no wonder that she has famous fans like Paul McCartney, Barack and Michelle Obama, Adele, and Tyler, the Creator. She was also able to serve as a protege to the late Prince. As a group, Alabama Shakes released 2 albums, one in 2012 and the other in 2015. The group's touring circuit expanded from club showcases to headlining sheds and festivals worldwide. Their roots were in the rural South. The group's first album, Boys and Girls, broadened the music well beyond any kind of soul revivalism, wandering at times towards psychedelic and punk. Still, it won 3 Grammys. By the time Alabama Shakes finished its most recent major tour in 2017, Brittany felt emotionally drained. But the thing about her time with Alabama Shakes is that she was able to travel the world for the first time. In 2012, when Alabama Shakes released their debut album, that album eventually sold more than 1 million copies in the United States. Brittany was 23 and she had never traveled outside the South. So it was a treat that she got to spend several years on tour with the band, an experience that she described as both joyful and disorienting. She visited England and France for the first time as part of the tour. But still, Brittany is a very proud Southerner. She explained in New Yorker magazine, "In the deepest core of me, when I go to my happy place, the air is humid, I smell barbecue, and there's a train nearby. But before the tour, I'd never seen a mountain before. I remember seeing the desert for the first time, the West Coast, the ocean. I was so excited about everything." But in 2017, Brittany left Alabama Shakes to make a solo album. The album, titled Jamie, after her deceased sister, was released in 2019.
Around 1950, Big Mama Thornton made her first recording in Houston, which was released under the name of Harlan Stars. Shortly thereafter, the local Peacock label signed her and she went to Los Angeles to make appearances with Johnny Otis, who was the leader of a popular show band. Mention the words hound dog, and inevitably the image of a pelvis swiveling Elvis Presley leaps to mind. However, 4 years before Presley would croon the song to a bored basset hound on the Steve Allen Show on July 1st, 1956, a rowdy blues singer named Big Mama Thornton first sang the track. In 1952, Big Mama was recording for Peacock in Los Angeles when two young writers, Lieber and Stoller, who were hanging around the LA studios hoping to get their songs recorded, handed her a song scribbled on a paper bag. Big Mama looked it over and started singing the lyrics. Johnny Otis put some catchy arrangements behind her and they recorded it. Peacock put the tape on the shelf for a while, but when Hound Dog finally came out, it put Big Mama's name out all over the country. Her version, which exuded female empowerment and ownership of sexuality, sounded even more daring than Presley's relatively tame reworking. In addition, the track would help launch the career of songwriters Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller. Most importantly, Hound Dog demonstrates the tremendous role of R&B and how it played in the early rock and roll, both in sound and in theme. She was in Dayton, Ohio with the late Johnny Ace when the record came out in '53. It was a hit for Big Mama and Big Mama was in demand for promoters who put together a big R&B show, and she went out on tour from coast to coast. Later, Elvis Presley recorded the song and made a monster hit from himself, utilizing pretty much the same arrangements. After its July 1956 release, Presley's Hound Dog became a cross-the-board sensation. It topped the R&B and country charts and gradually reached #1 on the pop charts. The song initially preventing the song from topping the #1 list? Don't Be Cruel, the A-side of his own single. Presley's version sold about 10 million copies globally. His best-selling song and an emblem of the rock and roll revolution. It was simultaneously #1 on the U.S. pop, country, and R&B charts in 1956, and it topped the pop charts for 11 consecutive weeks, a record that stood for 36 years. Presley's 1956 recording was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1988, and it's listed as one of rock and roll's Hall of Fame 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. Both versions share one element in common and a crucial difference. Both address an eternal rock and roll theme, rebellion. A crucial difference, however, lies in that rebellion. As Rolling Stone states, Presley snarls vocals as a declaration of independence from his generation's cold, rigid elders. However, Thornton's bluesy, growling, commanding voice expresses a theme hereto unexplored in pop music: female empowerment. Hound Dog has been at the center of controversies and several lawsuits, including disputes over ownerships, royalty, and copyright infringements. From the 1970s onward, the song has been featured in numerous films, including Grease, Forrest Gump, Lilo and Stitch, A Few Good Men, Hound Dog, Indiana Jones, and The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and Nowhere Boy. Unfairly, Hound Dog is better remembered today for Elvis's relatively tame version, and as Thornton would later say, that song must have sold 2 million copies, and I was paid one check for $500 and never another cent. Still, Thornton's original version broke new ground for R&B and early rock with its unabashed sexuality and feminist stance. She would one day say, "I first saw some lines on a paper bag, and I threw in a holler to make it go. I wish now I hadn't. Everybody else got paid, but I didn't get mine. Sometimes I've gotten $50 for a whole week singing, trying to make it. Sometimes you get $50, sometimes you didn't." The man would simply run off with it. Now you got to go and fuss with your landlord. You'll pay him next week. Maybe you catch that man, maybe you don't. They've taken everything from me but my voice.
Coming from a career military family, Emmylou spent most of her childhood in North Carolina and Virginia. She graduated high school as her class's valedictorian and won a drama scholarship. She studied music, learning the songs of Pete Seeger, Bob Dylan, and Joan Baez, playing the guitar. She dropped out of college to pursue her musical career and moved to New York City, where she worked as a waitress in coffee houses in Greenwich Village while she was singing folk songs as part of the 60s folk music boom. She married another songwriter, Tom Slocum, in 1969 and recorded her first album. They soon divorced, and she and her infant daughter moved in with her parents. Emmylou teamed up with Graham Parsons, touring with his band, The Fallen Angels, in 1973, and worked on a studio album with him later that year. Parsons died in September of that same year from an accidental overdose of drugs and alcohol. He is a recurrent theme in her music that she writes herself. He was her mentor. She met him, she co-wrote with him, she traveled with him, and then he died. So it was like she keeps writing songs to try to give herself perspective on that. She wrote this, "Most of my career I've been a finder of songs, a gatherer of songs. I think you get to a certain point in your life where you do gaze back over the years, and it is sort of a celebration or a thank you for the fact that you cross paths with people who change you forever. And that's the way she felt about Graham Parsons. She appeared on 3 of his albums, all released posthumously. Her first #1 country album was released in 1975, and she won her first Grammy in 1976 for Best Country Vocal Performance Female. Here's a little bit of Emmylou and Graham singing together. In 1977, Emmylou married Brian Ahern, her producer, and they had a daughter together in 1979. During this time, she recorded and released 3 albums, including a Christmas album featuring backup vocals by Dolly Parton, Linda Ronstadt, and Neil Young, with collaborations with these 3 continuing through the 2000s. In fact, if you look at Emmylou Harris, Dolly Parton, and Linda Ronstadt, that was a strong women collaboration that continued through 3 albums, Trio, Trio 2, and Trio 3. Emmylou moved to Nashville in 1982. English songwriter and producer Paul Kennerly co-wrote songs with her and produced her albums during this time. The 2 married in 1985 and divorced in 1993. Emmylou has been a member of the Grand Ole Opry since that time, which she was invited to join in 1992. In 1995, Emmylou chose to move away from her country roots and released one of the most critically acclaimed albums of the decade, Wrecking Ball, which included an update of her song, Boulder to Birmingham, which was written with Graham Parsons in mind with the song. Listen to a bit of it.
And welcome everyone to another edition of 90.9 WJAB's Yo Just Checking In. I'm your host, Marcus Sims. We are powered by 90.9 FM and also WJAB.org. We're your quarantine style show. Normally we would have our guests in-house, but because of COVID-19, the pandemic, we've been using this awesome Zoom platform to inform you on things that are happening in the Tennessee Valley and so on and so forth. So we're so happy to have on with us right now the niece of the legendary. And I mean, if you want to know how legendary this artist is, Wikipedia. But we want to welcome the niece,
yes,
Dinah Washington, Kristen Atkins. Kristen, how you doing?
I am fabulous. And how are you today?
I am doing awesome. Thank you so much for talking with us and having a few moments to speak with us this Thursday. Now, we know Valley Arts and Entertainment coming up on November the 14th at the Cooper House. And if you're familiar with the Cooper House, those in Huntsville, Alabama, it's in downtown Huntsville. It's really a beautiful place, one of my favorite places to have music, whether it's classical or jazz or even some R&B, but it's really, really a nice place. Well, on November the 14th, Valley Arts and Entertainment, as part of their educational edutainment, as I like to say, series that they do, they're having a special exhibit dealing with Tuscaloosa, Alabama's own Dinah Washington. So the curator, the narrator, the person who's going to take you on this trip is going to be our guest right now, Kristen Atkins. So Kristen, tell us a little bit what we can expect from this exhibit coming up on the 14th.
Well, you can expect some very interesting facts about my aunt. There are things that a lot of people don't know about her. They know she was pretty feisty and that you needed to listen to her when she was up performing, or she will tell you about yourself. But there were a lot of other facts about her. I'm going to give you like tidbits about all of her 7 husbands, and even about 2 people that people thought that she was married to and she wasn't. So we're just going to get down to the brass tacks of her celebrity friends and the things she loved to do, share some of her music, and you'll also hear me sing some of her music also. So it's just going to be a really fun time.
And of course, mentioning, of course, your aunt, amongst the many accolades that she has, she's considered by many the greatest voice of the 1950, one of greatest female voices of the 1950s. Of course, we play her music heavy here on 90.9 WJ.
Awesome.
And of course, if I'm correct, in the 1990s, she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So definitely when you're talking about a trailblazer, not just as far as jazz or blues music, you're talking about trailblazer all around. Your aunt would definitely be one of those, right?
Absolutely. Yes, you are correct. She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the 90s, in which I was actually there. We helped to receive that award. She's also in the Blues Hall of Fame. She's in the Grammy Hall of Fame. She did win a Grammy Award for What a Difference a Day Makes in 1959. And it's really a really important fact about that. She didn't really like the song at first, but the people that were working with her, they said, no, you have to do this song. We don't care if you don't like it. And so she recorded it anyway and ended up loving it later. But she listened to the people that were working with her, and it crossed over and went to the R&B charts. And it was just a great song for her. And back then it sold 1 million copies. So you know what it would be like now. And on YouTube, it's about over 6 million views. So her music is still relevant today. She was the first queen of blues. I know they've had several after her, but she was the first.
Right. Now, as a music teacher, do you and being her aunt, do you sometimes implement a lot of your aunt's music to your students, or try to introduce your students to Dinah Washington?
Of course I do. I talk about her all of the time. And right now I'm doing a whole curriculum on social injustice topics with different artists across genres. So she was definitely a trailblazer. She sang a lot of music of her time. She was very active in the civil rights movement with Dr. Martin Luther King. She had discussions with him. I also have a picture of that in my presentation. And one of the recent things that I've done, if you can see behind me, I wrote a children's book about her life. And so my book is geared to like pre-K to maybe 4th grade, but even adults have gotten the book and they love it. They love the illustrations. Maria Bay out of London, she did all of my illustrations. And in the UK, people just absolutely love her there. So I think picking Mary was a great That was a great thing for the book. So yeah, I'm always talking about my aunt. And I also do tributes all across the country, singing her very popular music.
Now, do you have a favorite song that your aunt sing or produced? Do you have a favorite song?
Well, I do have a couple of favorites. Of course, What a Difference a Day Makes. I really, really love that. I know everybody knows that, but I just really like it. I like the message because when you think about what a difference a day makes, today it could be rainy and stormy and a hurricane. And the next day it could be peaceful and just beautiful. So that's why I really love that song. I really love Cry Me a River, because relationships are hard, and we know as women, we always think about relationships. So both of those songs are about relationships, but I love both of those songs. And then I love her gospel song. She wrote a gospel song in 1941. So if people come to the presentation, they'll be able to see the actual copyright from 1951 that I got from the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Hey, hey, I said, hey, I said, hey, hey, brothers and sisters, now y'all now show me the way to get to Soulville. Show me the way to go home. Show me the way.
My name is Clarissa Smith, and I'm the sister of Dinah Washington. And I'm doing this video because I'm interested in everybody learning about her. And I want to thank the Women of Alabama exhibit for allowing me to give you this information at this time. That one of the greatest blues and popular singers of all times was Dinah Washington. And she created herself in the image of a shooting star. We came from a religious family. My mother was deeply rooted in religion, and we all loved gospel music. And my siblings, my brother, my sister and I all learned how to play music very early. We were all musicians, and we loved gospel music. So we would be with my mother, and my mother would be in church a lot, and Dinah would be in church, and then we were all just together as far as religion is concerned. Dinah was a pianist, and she was also a singer. So she learned how to play at a very early age. And at the age of 8, my mother really discovered how talented she was. So she became her coach and her early music teacher. And Dinah was in church one Sunday. We were at St. Luke's Baptist Church on the south side of Chicago. And Dinah went to the piano. She was 8 years old. She went to the piano and she played the song that the choir had sung that day, Singing in My Soul. And my mother was amazed because she didn't know that Dinah played that well and could play something all the way through with all the accompaniment. So Dinah played this, and that Monday, my parents went out and bought a piano. And they paid $8 for the piano. And then Dinah had something to practice on, and my mother went out and found her a piano teacher, and her piano teacher, of course, brought her up to snuff with a lot of things musically. So that was her beginning musically, and it was in the church, and she did a lot of gospel music. She also traveled with our mother, and they would present concerts in different churches. She became one of the pianists at St. Luke's, because she accompanied the choir at my mother's behest. And this made her really a part of that music. She performed with the Sally Martin singers, and Sally Martin at that time was known as a mother of gospel. And she performed with Roberta Martin and with Thomas Dorsey, who was a famous gospel and hymn writer of the time. She traveled with them, and she ended up playing for Sally Martin's group, as well as singing with the group wherever she was needed. Part of Sally Martin's Colored Ladies Quartet, which was the first all-women gospel quartet that had been founded by Sally Martin. She developed a liking for popular music, and along with the gospel music, and her favorite singer at that time was Billie Holiday. She had told my mother earlier that she wanted to be a showgirl. So, of course, that was in the back of her mind all the time when she was singing and playing. At the age of 15, she entered a talent contest, which was at the Regal Theater in Chicago. And she won first place. And she was singing as I Can't Face the Music. So this allowed her to be able to perform in a non-gospel setting. And she found that she really loved that kind of music, and she loved performing there. So with her singing there, she would kind of split her time between secular music and gospel music. But our mother did not approve of this and really felt like the music that she was singing away from home was like the devil's music. So she really did not, our mother did not want her to participate in that. But Dinah was steadfast because she loved popular music as well as gospel music. So after the contest, she was given an opportunity to sing at the Garrick Stage Bar, where she met Billie Holiday, which was one of her idols. And when she met Billie, this was an opportunity for her to really be a part of secular music. She was a part of Lionel Hampton's band. This was a part of her being in secular music. And I think around 1940, she started singing with his band, and she was the only girl singer, the only female in the band. And she traveled with Lionel Hampton, and pretty much the name that she got, Dinah Washington, either was suggested, we don't know fully what the details were, but the name Dinah Washington was either suggested by Joe Glaser or Lionel Hampton. But at that point, in the secular field, she became known as, she was rooted in gospel music. Like I said, loved gospel music, you know, lifetime member of the gospel convention. And she just, every time she had a chance, she would come back to her roots. But those feelings about gospel music really enhanced her ability to sing the blues, because the blues and gospel music were related. And you had to have some kind of deep feeling if you were going to sing the blues. It had to come from your heart and from your soul. And that's why I think she became known as a queen of the blues. Even though this was not the only style of music that she performed, originally it was. And people really could get into that because they really enjoyed the way she portrayed the blues. But she went on later to do pop music and rhythm and blues and jazz and, you know, all the other songs of that day, ballads. And she performed them all, you know, when she was able to sing them, she was able to record just a variety of songs. And she recorded over 300 songs. So it was her ability to, like I said originally, to say everything, to sing everything, and do everything. And the fact that she was a musician and had been hailed as a child prodigy when she was discovered really helped her as far as music was concerned. When she'd go in the music studio, when she'd go in to record, they called her the one-take artist, because she would do one take and she'd be through. And it would be flawless, and they really got to the point where they expected her to do everything. Now, everything she did in the studio was not one take, because I remember personally being in New York, where she had moved shortly after her career took off, and I was in the studio and she was recording, and it was Fly Me to the Moon. And they had to do a lot of different takes of that, and it kind of surprised me, because all of the other songs she had done had been just done very quickly. But that one song, I remember she had to do over and over again. There was something wrong with it. They had to, you know, cut. We have to start all over again. And that became one of my favorite songs, because I heard it so many times that it was, you know, it just became one of my favorites. When Quincy was a young musician at the time. I think he was maybe like about 22. And he was trying to get started in the business, and he wasn't that well known. And she liked what she heard, liked what she saw. And she said, well, I want you to be the artistic director on this album I'm doing. And I believe the name of the album was For Those in Love. The people who ran the label, like Mercury, decided, they said, well, he's not a known director. We don't know anything about him. He doesn't have a name. And she said, well, I'll tell you what, you will have a name, and the name will be Dinah Washington. So they allowed Quincy to do the album, and the album was just magnificent. It really took off. There were a lot of sales, and they were convinced that, okay, here's a young man that has a lot of talent. And Quincy went to the point in describing her, where he had this little story that he would tell about her, and about her being, an artist that he could really work with because she was very knowledgeable. She knew a lot about show business. She knew a lot about music. And he said that she was noted as an excellent musician with perfect pitch and with the ability to play the piano and the vibraphone with notable agility and skill. And he described her style. And he described it this way. He said she could take the melody in her hand and hold it like an egg, crack it open, fry it, let it sizzle, and reconstruct it, and put the egg back in the box and back in the refrigerator, and you would have understood every single syllable that she said. Now, as she went on in show business, she became known as the Queen of the Blues and also the Queen of the Jukeboxes. And how she got that title was that she was the first black female artist that was featured on the jukeboxes in Howard Johnson's restaurants and at his locations, where she was the most recorded female of her time. She had a lot of business skills. She knew how to operate a business and have people on her show and have her own payroll. And into this spread her generosity to all the people that were around her, because if somebody needed something beyond what she was already given, she would try to help them. If they were ill, she would get them a doctor. If they needed food, if they needed clothing, she would give away her clothing to people that she thought needed them. She was a very generous person. Being the sister of Dinah Washington was very rewarding. It was a very happy experience. It was a very fun experience because she loved her sisters and brothers. She loved her family, and she cared deeply for all of us, and she did everything she could to make us happy. And at the time, as a child, I never thought about it, how much she contributed to our upkeep, because she was paying all the bills. She was buying the house we lived in, and originally we lived in Ida B. Wells when she became famous. And in 1948, she bought a house for us, practically paid cash for it because it was paid for in 2 years. And it was a very nice neighborhood on the west side. It was at 1518 South Trumbull. And we had a big backyard. We had a nice big house. Everybody had their own bedroom. So it was an ideal situation for any child. Everything that we basically wanted or needed, she got it for us. We weren't spoiled because my mother would not allow her to really spoil us, but she would buy us things that we wouldn't ordinarily have if she hadn't been there. And her career was growing and catapulting in 1948. Her records were on the charts. They were on the Billboard charts. And when I would tell people that she was my sister, they would automatically say, oh, you're lying. That's not your sister. They didn't believe me because they knew she was famous. And she's a famous person, so they thought I was just making it up. And a lot of times I had to show them. And me and my younger sister, Estrelita, we would tell people when she was going to come to town, the people that lived in our block, and they would all come out. And she would be there, and they, Dinah Washington, Dinah Washington. So the word got around, so those people had to believe us. And she would, during Christmas, she would buy everybody a gift. If you had any association with her at that time, you were going to get a present. Everything that happened with her was so good. I mean, it was all good. She just treated us like little angels or something. I don't know. She was so protective. She was like my mother. She was 15 years older than me, and she was 20 years older than my younger sister. So she was like a mother figure to us. And we had so much fun together because before her sons were born, it was like she treated us like her children. And my brother was 3 years older than me, so he was a little closer in age to her. She was 12 years older than him. But she treated the three of us like we were her children and bought us everything that she thought we wanted or needed. And it was just great having her for a sister.